My name is Leila Toplik, and it's great to be back at the Singularity University's Global Summit and to have this opportunity to talk about AI for Good. And thank you for the Singularity University for creating the space to have this important conversation. Now, I lead Emerging Technologies initiative at NetHope with a focus on AI and blockchain. And NetHope is a nonprofit technology consortium of 57 global NGOs. Organizations like Oxfam, Save the Children, Mercy Corps, Habitat for Humanity, the Nature Conservancy, all of us working together also with 60 plus of our partners, including technology companies, some of them in the room here with us today. I'll share a few insights in a brief introduction before I bring Tess, Cameron, and Amir on stage to have a discussion about AI for Good. First, what do we mean when we say AI for Good? AI for Good is about using AI to solve some of the society's toughest problems. AI can help us do good better. It can help us do a number of things better. It can help us make decisions and act faster in emergencies like natural disasters. It can help us reach more people with services and information that they need, like refugees. It can also help us have the insights that we need to predict and prevent some of the worst things from happening, like infectious disease outbreaks. And in my work at NetHope, I see two things that are quite promising. First, we know that despite the tremendous progress that we've made over the past several decades, as shared by Ray and Peter, we still have some massive societal challenges that we need to solve, from the global refugee crisis, infectious disease outbreaks, environmental challenges, to poverty, hunger, or human trafficking. And AI can help us move the needle on all of these different challenges. For example, we're starting to see AI being used to predict crop yields so we can prevent famines and alleviate poverty. It can help us provide early warning systems for earthquakes so we can actually save lives, or prevent poaching of elephants and other wildlife by giving us information for smarter park ranger routes. In short, AI applies to all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The second area that's promising, and first, it's important to know that we in the nonprofit sector know that we cannot solve these societal challenges alone. We can chip away at them, but that's not enough. We need partners. And what I'm seeing in my work on emerging technologies at NetHope is something that Rob and a number of others talked about here on the main stage, is that uncommon partners, enterprises, startups, nonprofits, academia, and communities from all over the world coming together to work on solutions to these societal challenges. So that's promising. But it's also important to note that it's so early. It's early days for AI in nonprofit sector. The use of AI is still very nascent. And we have many pilots that are not yet delivering any major impact or scale. And there are a few things that we need to do in order to achieve broader adoption and scaled impact. And also to mitigate risks. And I'll mention three that we'll explore in more detail in the discussion in a few minutes. First, we need to shift from talking mostly about the potential of AI for societal good to nonprofits and communities around the world knowing how to develop and use AI solutions. More on that in a minute. Second, inclusivity should not stop at nonprofits and communities having a seat at the table and becoming creators. We all need to put inclusivity, fairness, and other ethical considerations in the work that we do. Whether it's the teams we hire, the data we use, how we frame the problems, how we implement the solutions, and whether we use some of the solutions that could cause harm. Third, we need to start with the problems that people and communities are facing today, not with the technology. Now, as a technologist, I'm super excited about the technological innovations that we've been hearing about over the past 2 days, but also as a humanitarian. And as a former refugee myself, I know firsthand that the value of technologies like AI will come from practical implementations, solving real problems, and doing that in a sustainable and scalable way. And with that, I would like to bring Tess, Cameron, and Amir on stage to join me for a discussion. So a brief introduction, and then we'll dive deeper into what each of the organizations represented on this stage are doing in the AI for Good space. Tess Bosner. Tess and I go way back in the social impact space. She leads AI for All, which is a nonprofit dedicated to increasing diversity and inclusion in AI. Cameron Burge, close partner of NetHope, works on the Microsoft Philanthropies team, where he's managing AI for Humanitarian Action Initiative. And I'll let Cameron share more about the work that AI for Humanitarian Action is doing. And Amir Banifatami, he wears a number of hats, is a great partner. He leads IBM Watson AI X Prize, which is a global competition focused on using AI to tackle the world's grand challenges. He also leads AI Commons, a community focused on collaborating on solutions to societal challenges. So, and just briefly, I'll play 2 roles in this discussion. I'll be the moderator and also representing the work of the global NGOs and our partners. And with the time that we have available, we'll have a conversation on the main stage and then take the advantage of the lunch break to connect with all of you one-on-one. So let's start with a brief overview of what each of the organizations is doing in the AI for Good space. So Tess, over to you.
Yes, thank you. So excited to be here. Thank you, Layla. Thank you both, and thank you all for coming. So helping kids with autism communicate, diagnosing dyslexia early with webcams, tracking the spread of wildfires. These are all amazing applications of AI for Good, and they're all started by high school students. So AI for All, the organization that I lead, we're really focused on increasing diversity and inclusion in AI with the goal of maximizing the potential of AI for Good. And we run education and mentorship programs so far in North America, but we're going to be expanding globally. And our goal is really to provide exposure, AI literacy, and mentorship for those that would otherwise be left behind out of the AI space and realm. And we've seen amazing results so far. So our young people, 77% of them want to go into AI after the programs. 100% feel like AI can benefit the world. But what's most amazing is that they on their own have impacted an additional 6,000 young people. And so what we've seen is when we give people access to these tools and we give them agency and a voice, it has this incredible network effect. And we really believe that we are only going to get the results that we want with the potential of AI for Good and some of the things that Layla mentioned if we make this accessible and inclusive to everyone and not just those that are getting access to it now.
Thank you, Tess. Cameron?
Thank you, Layla. Thank you, everybody, for being here. So as mentioned, I do work on the AI for Humanitarian Action Initiative for Microsoft, which is part of our overall AI for Good portfolio. We actually have 4 pillars. There's AI for Earth, which is focusing on issues such as biodiversity, climate change, agricultural outputs, and water cleanliness. We have AI for Accessibility, bringing AI tools to ensure that those with disabilities around the world still have access to the same digital opportunities that are currently taking place. We have AI for Humanitarian Action. We're the third sister in this little forum, and we're focusing on projects around human rights, disaster response, refugees and displaced persons, and needs of children. And then one that was recently announced was this AI for cultural heritage, and how to use AI tools to help preserve things that might be lost as we continue to advance. And actually, all these programs are just extensions of work that Microsoft was already doing. We have been in the humanitarian action space for a long time. Actually, it's why I was brought on board. I actually manage how the company responds to humanitarian disasters. But these programs were spun out and provided resources so that we can provide our resources, our expertise to organizations that are working in the space to help them move forward, to give them the tools they need to either respond better or work better in this area. And so it's a 5-year overall initiative, and we've had quite a few projects that spun out, and look forward to explaining them.
Thank you, Cameron. Amir, you're doing a number of things.
Thank you very much, Leila, and thank you all for being here. I'm also excited to share a little bit of what we do at XPRIZE. 4 years ago, XPRIZE is a nonprofit organization that for the past 25 years have incentivized everyone in the world to take on large challenges. It started with going back to space, from citizens, cleaning up the oceans, helping refugees, solving carbon sequestration, and basically tackling all the grand challenges. So XPRIZE, in the course of its effort, is in the business of incentivizing and creating pathways and collaboration frameworks to enable everyone in the world to participate in solving challenges that may not be solved through the natural course of science or venture capital or government support. So it was very natural that 4 years ago, with the growth of AI, that we asked ourselves that question, which was, what AI is good for? And how can we know AI is useful for society and helping challenges? And that manifested itself by the first competition supported by IBM Watson to enable a number of teams to participate and solve for that question. And that led us pretty much very quickly to observe through the participation of 150 teams across 40 countries that what they wanted to solve for was actually supporting the Sustainable Development Goals. They were talking about eradicating poverty, helping children learn faster, helping giving people more agency about their destiny on getting credits or microcredits. And that, in fact, inspired us to start the conversation about AI for good. I don't think we're the very first ones, but we probably had a huge role to play in this global AI for good movement. We contacted our UN partners and created this yearly gathering called the AI for Good Global Summit, which we attended and had a workshop there as well. And that validated everything that Tess and Cameron said also, is that really is about providing autonomy, agency, capability to all people to be able to solve their own problems. But that cannot be done by just thinking that we can export some know-how. We need to empower them. And to empower them, it requires collaboration, it requires data sharing, it requires training, it requires support, understanding, and not thinking that we are the problem solvers for other people's problems. Everyone is a problem solver in their own rights. And that's basically what we're doing. And through that, we have identified a number of initiatives that are important and we're doing with other partners, and we joined many organizations as well to do so. Tomorrow, I will have the chance to introduce what XPRIZE is doing called the Data Collective. It's a global effort to gather trustworthy, trusted, labeled data to be made available to everyone that is trying to solve one of those grand challenges.
Great.
And everything else basically based on that.
So an opportunity tomorrow to actually learn more about XPRIZE. So just briefly, also building on what Tess, Cameron, and Amir shared, at NetHope, this Emerging Technologies Initiative, what it does, it brings actually together some of the global NGOs as well as other partners. So it could be UN agencies or other nonprofits with technology experts, so including enterprises and startups and also academia and the impacted communities like refugee populations to together create solutions to the specific challenges in the humanitarian context, development, so for example around health or agriculture, or the conservation space, and we do that with the support from our partners and also funders. We see, and with the reason why we're looking at AI and looking to embed AI in the work we do is because it is an incredibly powerful tool that can help us do good better. So as I mentioned, in the emergencies, we respond to a number of emergencies. It can help us make decisions faster and act faster so we can save more lives. It can help us predict and ideally prevent some of the outbreaks like Ebola outbreak. It can help us reach more populations with the resources they need, like refugees. I know that this group loves numbers, so let me just give you some numbers that actually speak to the importance of having powerful tools like AI in our toolbox. NetHope members alone, so 57 global NGOs, deliver $23 billion in international aid annually. That's a huge number. So it's about 60% of the overall international aid annually. In the nonprofit space, we feel quite strained for the resources because of the growing gap between the available resources that we get and also growing needs that we've been talking about in this session. AI, along with a number of other tools and also processes, can enhance the impact of each budget dollar. So imagine this, every 5% increase in the effectiveness of the NGO sector translates into $2 billion of enhanced annual global impact. What that means is many lives saved, children vaccinated and educated, famines prevented. So that is why organizations like NetHope and our members are looking at technologies like AI to embed in our programming. And on that note, let's actually talk about some of the practical implementations of AI in our sector, noting that it's still quite early, but we have some interesting insights and lessons that we can share with this group. Cameron, let's start with you and some of the work that you're doing with the nonprofits.
Yeah, thank you. So as mentioned, we started the AI for Humanitarian Action just under a year ago at the last UNGA assembly. And since then, we are now at 22 projects. We have 5 completed, 22 ongoing now, and we have learned quite a bit. Some of our initial impacts have actually been, fascinating enough, on the freeing up of resources. So business processes that were basically taking a lot of manpower, that were monotonous, and providing tools in that manner. There was a nonprofit that deploys volunteers for disaster response. Their business problem is actually they had to get certifications from volunteers and then update their records so that they could deploy. Well, we just use an AI tool to capture all those details and automatically update their volunteer management system. And those HR people then got to go to something more value adding. They got to put more where they're going to have an impact. And this is an approach that Microsoft is also seeing. It's not about necessarily AI tools that are going to come and replace a person. It's about coming in and supporting and freeing up those high value resources. Nonprofits don't have a lot of resources, and every man hour you can free up something high impact helps them in their programs. And everything to like another good project with humanitarian OpenStreetMaps. And so they build tools for volunteer mapping of humanitarian maps of high importance. Their business problem is they have 300 million unmapped buildings they need to identify, but with 70,000 volunteers, it was going to take them more than 10 years in their current path forward. So how do we help them upgrade their platform to accept ML inputs? But we're not looking to replace the volunteers. The volunteers are still going to validate what the ML outputs are doing. Again, there still needs to be a human in the loop to check it, but we can speed up their output by 6 to 10 times is the goal. And so these organizations that understand their business processes and how they're using that to approach a problem, that's when we can really have a fascinating conversation on where we can come in and really provide value and help them move faster behind the scenes so that they're focused on the humanitarian issue at the end. And that's just it. These humanitarian issues are human issues. We can help provide tools to help them do their job better, but nothing that we're going to produce is going to replace that need. And so that's how we've been focusing on the projects, and that's sort of the impact we've been seeing so far.
Right, and building on that, so Tess, we know from our work that solutions to some of these problems will come from very different and unlikely places. So whether it's nonprofits or it is AI for all students, can you share a bit what your students are working on?
Oh yeah, it's been amazing to see. So we work with mostly high school students, but some college students as well. And just organically, we take a very practical approach. So we expose them to AI and really looking at the broad implications, not just AI for good, but what are some of the potential risks? How do we teach them about mitigating bias? How do we teach them about the applications? But the biggest thing that we've seen be impactful is this is a tool for you to solve a problem that you care about. And young people are hungry to make a difference and to understand, like, where is my impact in the world? What can I do with my passions and talent? And so AI is really a rocket fuel for that, as we're talking about. So we've seen students actually win Best Paper Awards at one of the largest AI conferences. Students present at conferences all around the world, their original research, as well as start AI clubs at their schools, start AI outreach initiatives in their communities, and really just solve problems that they care about. So some include like addressing water quality issues. Others include improving surgeon technique. This was a high school student that won Best Paper Award at the healthcare workshop at NeurIPS. Amazing, amazing feat. And there's just so many other examples that I can't even name. But the point is, I think that we need to make sure that we bring more people into the field. Right now, there's a major diversity crisis in AI. And there's so much potential, as you hear about on this stage. But what we're actually seeing in terms of who's building and developing it is a very homogenous group of people. And ultimately, diversity is going to lead not just to us mitigating risks like bias creeping into AI and machine learning systems unintentionally, but also it's going to maximize the potential for innovation, for profitability and growth, and for a more diverse set of problems getting addressed. And so we see that every day in our work, but it's really true in every single AI situation, whether it's a company building a new solution or a nonprofit working on these solutions. You have to prioritize this from the beginning and not wait till later, because it's harder to solve once you have a bigger organization, initiative, or team. And so it's really, really critical not just to build diverse AI teams, but also in your product development process. And really looking at, in each stage of the design, are you including the voices and the stakeholders that are going to be impacted by the solution, or those that know more about the problem than you? And how are you meaningfully engaging them at every stage of the product and testing design? Because that will yield much better results. And if you don't do that, it might, at best, not work as well as you want it to, or at worst, actually harm the communities that you're trying to help. And we've seen a lot of good intentions gone wrong because they're not involving people that are actually involved with the problem and the impact of the solution from the whole beginning of the process.
Those are some really important lessons learned, and also great examples from the future innovators. Amir, what are some of the practical examples as well as lessons learned from the work that you've done both with XPRIZE and now with the UN and AI Commons?
In fact, we also learned that there is a diversity crisis, for sure. One of the main issues, as was pointed out earlier today, is access to data. And there are data lakes everywhere. There are numerous sources. None of them are not always used. They're not necessarily captivated or captured in a private or ethical manner. The usage of that data will generate some consequences in terms of biases, but also ethical issues that we may not fully understand. So what we're trying to do is to understand what could scale, what AI4Good would mean for getting started, and what AI4Good means to scale up. And to scale up, you need repeatable solutions that could be certified at some point, that could be part of some form of standards that governments can support, that cities can support, that future sustainable funding could support. And for that, we need to make sure that there is no glitch in the system that could create it. So it's as important to start the process of getting some pilots out. And I think the world of education and teaching and expanding is good. And for the UN system and for governments, I think what they're witnessing is they are needing to get ready to build new policies and be able to regulate in a proper way what could work for them and for each community. And businesses need to be aligned with that. So if businesses need to participate in some ways in the transition from a pre-machine learning to a post-machine learning world, what would that mean in terms of their tax incentives, what that means in terms of their support for education or training, what that means in terms of working with sustainability and climate and supporting our environment, and people that need to transition from one job to another. So all those questions get embedded into, I think, the concept of scalability. And how we can scale things up is to identify the And this is what we're witnessing now with UNESCO, with UNICEF, with WHO on different topics such as malaria or help with children or basically preserving culture and education, is that how can we find frameworks that could scale up, and how each government and community and businesses can absorb them and agree to use them in their own way. So
Great.
this effort has been pretty much consistently observed, and I think policy is going to be the name of the game.
So maybe just a quick summary, as we've covered quite a bit here. So we've got diversity. We've got start with the existing processes and optimize them to free up some of that human time to actually tackle some of the bigger and greater challenges. We've got policies and the need for reuse and sharing, and the need, including data, and having good data. The one example, maybe just to add into this conversation, it's actually the example that I've been living over the past 18 months as I've been working very closely with our partners. It actually starts with just simple point that getting started with AI in nonprofit sector requires both knowledge and resources, and we don't have that knowledge in our sector. So we lack the expertise in AI, resources to get started, including some of the seed funding, and there are all sorts of challenges with data, as Amir pointed out. So, but we're entrepreneurial and want to figure this out. So how do we actually, on this specific problem that we wanted to solve, which is how might we enable out-of-school refugee children and youth to access educational resources anywhere and any time that are relevant to them, so in their language and aligned with the types of opportunities that they have locally. We brought in expertise from other sectors, and I think this is important for everybody in the room, whether you're a startup or enterprise or a nonprofit, to think about how do you augment what you know, what you have, with the expertise from other sectors. In this case, we brought in Microsoft, University College Dublin, together with our NGO member, Norwegian Refugee Council, and with the impacted populations, with the youth, we've been developing this solution. What's important about this is that you can also enable knowledge transfer that is project-based, and you can ensure adoption and relevancy and sustainability by including all of these key stakeholders in the development of the projects. So speaking of just some of these lessons learned that can help others get started in tackling some of the societal challenges or some of the local challenges, what should the organizations in the room consider when getting started? Cameron.
Well, I mean, speaking to our experience, quite similar to the slide we saw earlier, and you have the Google ethical values, which they provided. We have a similar set within Microsoft in fairness, accountability, transparency, the responsibilities you have in developing AI solutions. And also, we have a process, as one does. So internally, I am an AI ethics champ for my business unit. So I can be a consultant to any deals or questions. And if I am stuck or there's not precedent set, I can bump it up, and then we can actually get guidance out of a review committee. We've had 2 of our projects that actually went through a review committee, and we had to change the entire nature and structure of how we were approaching the project based on ethics concerns that the committee had. And this happens across the company. And so, but having that internal process, and then also when they sit down, they're pulling across the company. These aren't definitely not just engineers. There is the legal side. There is policy side. So having those people in the room to talk about consequences, where it can go wrong, how do we mitigate that risk beforehand, before any fingers are on keyboards, to have that process and guidance. And so, and also the nice thing too is once you have that initial guidance, it becomes sort of the standard guidance. We have precedent set that we can now provide as a reference to others as they pursue similar projects. So have that. And actually, Tess was even saying about diversity. When you're coming up with these projects, you have to have that also diversity of expertise in the room to really think about that, what you're developing, why you're developing it, and what could go wrong. Because in this space, if you go wrong, you can really harm a lot of people. And I appreciate the fail fast approach a lot of people have entrepreneurially, but there are some areas where you don't want to be failing fast and failing all the time to get the right solution. And when humans and lives and vulnerable situations are at stake, that's one of them. So.
Yeah. Thanks, Cameron. Tess or Amir?
Well, I'll just jump in and add that really understanding the problem that you're trying to solve and whether it really actually needs AI. AI has become such a shiny buzzword that it's often touted as the solution to anything. But in reality, it's like a great tool, but you have to make sure that it's actually needed. And I think really doing a needs assessment, deeply understanding what are the people who are experiencing this problem actually saying about it. And really, whether it's like setting up listening sessions, feedback sessions, getting them meaningfully involved in the development, and really, again, defining that problem clearly, because like you said, I think it can lead to, of course, unintended consequences, but when you're working, with issues that deal with people, which are a lot of things, that can be so detrimental. And so what do we need, who do we need to have in the room to help us understand the problem, and not just thinking about diversity of data sets. I think a lot of times we think about how to mitigate bias is about your data, which certainly helps, but I don't think that's enough. And I think it's short-sighted to say that we're going to solve these issues with just having a diversity of data sets. We need to have people that are impacted by AI systems, people that are impacted by the solutions that we're building, and people that know about the problem actually involved in a meaningful way from the beginning.
To build on that, just to cite a case that happened with us, I had a conversation with a nonprofit, and they're like, hey, we want to use AI to do this business process better. I'm like, great, how bad are you at it right now? Like, well, we don't know. And so we were in a situation where we could develop an AI solution, but you're going to have no idea if this is going to be better for you or worse from you, because they actually really hadn't sat down and really thought about themselves and what they were trying to solve and what that measure is. And so that way you need that. This is technology. You don't get to skip all the steps because it looks like magic fairy dust. You still have to approach it in a responsible way and understand what you're trying to get out of it.
Yeah, I concur with that as well. The problem is definitely the first step. Nothing has changed because AI has come. We have to focus on the problem and try to evaluate. But most likely problems are the same across industry and across communities, across businesses. So finding out what are the similarities between businesses or organizations that could be a framework or a comparison point or a gauge to learn together, I think that would be a good way to start what focus you want to have or what problems area you want to solve, and trying to learn from your industry or associations where you're involved, how others are doing, and lessons learned. There's probably a lot of repeat and iteration that is happening right now. So we're all learning collectively, whether we want it or not. So that could be one way to look at how do I start and what do I start on. And everything else was said already. But yeah, that's
Yeah, and
short.
just to maybe add and put a finer point on what Amir is saying, because it is important. So whether you're a bank or a healthcare company or somebody working in agriculture, there's a good chance that you've come up with a solution that could be useful, for example, for financial inclusion or for having better health outcomes or for detecting crop diseases that are useful in the social impact space. So something definitely to consider in terms of reuse and sharing and partnering if possible. The one other thing to note, and this is a question around how do we move beyond the pilots and into something that's scalable. What I'm finding out with our nonprofit members is how important it is not just to ask questions about how do you get to a pilot and resources that you need to have and infrastructure you need to have for a pilot, but really asking questions about the whole process from defining the opportunity, including, do you really need AI for this? Is Excel spreadsheet just fine? All the way to building a diverse team, data sourcing, but also implementation and scale, and even decommissioning the solution if it's no longer needed. You've got to be able to ask questions for the whole process, especially when you're not optimizing an existing process that has an infrastructure, but creating something that new. And one of the first frameworks that we've created to help nonprofits everywhere, but also their partners, think through this is a framework that has a whole set of questions that guide them through these different stages, a framework that's been developed by NetHub members as well as many of our partners, and that's available to all of you. In fact, there is a link to our Emerging Technologies Initiative on the slide. We have about a minute left, and I think with that minute, let's see what are some of the final calls to actions, and also opportunities to partner with this group. So Tess, let's start with you.
Yeah, sure. So we're launching a new program to scale our AI curriculum. It's a very inclusive and approachable way for young people to get started. And we're looking for partners who already work with young people from underrepresented backgrounds. And this is going to be a free curriculum for teachers to incorporate AI into what they're already doing. And we provide support for teachers as well. So that's coming out this fall. We also have amazing talent. If anyone's hiring for interns or need extra talent on your teams, we have some amazing young people. So you can get in touch with us at AI for All, and we'll let you know about those opportunities. Thank you.
In the AI for Good program, AI for Earth and AI for Accessibility, they have grants and expertise that are available to all organizations. Humanitarian action, we actually are very specifically targeted towards nonprofits based on relationships. But I mean, we love to have the conversation. We're tool builders, and we are platform builders for these organizations. But it'd be interesting to have the conversation. Are these challenges in the humanitarian space, are they solvable? What would it take to get them to actually just have them solved and no longer be there? And then what's the role of technology to help us get there? And it'd be enlightening to sort of think of that way.
I will have the chance tomorrow to talk about XPRIZE and what we do, so I'm not going to talk about XPRIZE right now, but as a call to action, I think what would be probably useful to think about, and I'm going to repeat myself a little bit, is that think about what type of data do you own inside your organization that is of value, that is good and clean and labeled, that you are willing to share, that you can afford to share. So that's one thing. The second one is that think about how your processes could be impacted by AI and trying to learn about that and make sure you have the policies in-house to go through that transition, because whatever you want to do with machine learning AI in the near future or later will be impacted by that, and that policy is going to be instrumental. And third one is to collaborate. I think we're in a period of time where we're learning together. It's like the beginning of the internet again, and except probably the very large players today that have enough capabilities and technology and manpower and talent and money to direct some AI research and test, I think the rest of the world is not able to do that. So collaboration is an important part. And learning together, I think, is important.
Yeah, I echo everything that's been said. And just to add, to go back to something that I said in the opening, which is 17 Sustainable Development Goals, I encourage you to look at them and adopt one or more of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals for your organizations. It's likely that through your products or through your businesses or through your business practices, you're already addressing some of them, whether it's around financial inclusion or agriculture or poverty alleviation. But do it with intention and hold yourself accountable and talk about it with others, because we need more in this ecosystem of AI for Good to join us and to collaborate. With that, I'd like to thank you all, and especially our panelists, for a conversation, and hopefully this has inspired some questions that you'll have for us over lunch, and look forward to meeting you in a minute or so. Thank you.